And we're live.
What's
Hello.
up?
What's up?
I just had such a bad urge to say, hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Oh no. Maybe you should just go for it and get it out of your system one day. Hello, Yang Gang Book Club. We're waiting for people to come into the chat, but I'm going to say hi and introduce to you. Which way is it again? Oh, yeah. My good friend, Faith Stevens, PT. Do you want to tell us your full title? Because I don't have it memorized.
It would be Faith Stevens, PT, DPT, PCS. But at work, I go by Faith. So that's it.
I like it. Cool. So yeah, Faith is a beast. You got your PhD at what age?
It's a doctor of physical therapy, but 22.
Oh, wow.
22. It's a little different than a PhD. It doesn't have the dissertation. It's a clinical doctorate.
Yeah. To me, I'm just like, it's all the same. Dr. Faith at 22. But I know you don't go by Dr. Faith. But in my head, you do. Because you have an answer for everything.
Not everything.
A lot of things. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. Faithy Poo.
Okay.
Yeah, Faith and I go way back. We met doing dance.
Elementary school.
Elementary school. I don't know. I don't remember which grade. It was young though.
Yeah.
Like I almost want to say like 3rd grade or something, 4th grade.
Maybe 4th or 5th. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Julene School of Dance in Modesto, California. And we were buddies for a long time. And I stuck with dance, but then you had a career change mid-high school. What did you switch to after ballet, Faith?
Oh, what didn't I switch to? Cross country, wrestling, and track.
Yeah. The one that sticks out to me is wrestling, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. You went from ballet dancer to a wrestler. So
a lot of similarities.
And then got your, sorry?
I said a lot of similarities, surprisingly.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about that. And then got your PhD, aka got your doctorate of physical therapy at 22. Super cool. So Faith is going to be talking to us about your career. You've been doing what you do for how long, and give us a rundown of like what you do.
Okay, so I've been a physical therapist for, this will be like year 5. And I did a brief like 2-month sit in orthopedics. Not for me at all. I don't like it. My career's been pretty much in pediatrics and acute care. I really like wound care. And peds actually has a lot of wounds, so I get to do both that way. Right now I'm just doing pediatrics. I quit my acute care job a while ago, but I was doing per diem for a long time. And I currently work for the county. I don't know if I have permission to say which one, but you can link in me if you want to know. It's a program called California Children's Services. It's unique to California that you are eligible based on your medical diagnosis, and you don't have to have financial eligibility for the medical therapy program. So that means kids, regardless of income, even if your mom's a millionaire or if your dad is a custodian, it does not matter. If you have a medically eligible diagnosis like cerebral palsy or arthrogryposis, you can receive medically needed physical therapy and occupational therapy services free of charge.
Wow. So cool. That's super cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so how long have you specifically had that job?
I worked for my first county in 2016. I was hired in, October 2016. So basically in one county or the other since then.
Cool. So let's see. Maybe we should backtrack a little bit, and we can really start with like letting you tell me like what led you to pursuing physical therapy specifically. I know you touched on trying something else and not liking it, but you have such a like athletic background, and it is such a diverse athletic background. So I'd be interested to hear a bit of that.
Let's see. I actually was torn between going to medical school to study pathology because I really like microbiome, which is strange, and histology. But I didn't think I would do super well in a lab full time or in like a coroner's office. And those are kind of more of the setting. And it's a lot of schooling, which is, now it's like, oh, you would have been done. But when you're 18, looking at where you want to go to school, it's a lot of schooling. And I wasn't sure what my home life would look like if I'm working that type of job, and if I still would I have time to like be a good friend, have a family. Physical therapy seemed to be that right balance for me. And I like that I could jump from one field to another within physical therapy. I don't have to be locked down to this one category my whole career. So if I ever get bored, there's other types of physical therapy for me to do. And I kind of like hover in a couple different fields anyway. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. So what do you mean by hover in a couple different fields?
Yeah. So I very much, my job is 100% pediatrics, but I do a lot of seating and consults that way. So if I ever wanted to move away from public health, I could look at product development for like a manufacturer. That's some way I could go. I could look at working for a company that supplies equipment. I could go back to acute care. I could do home health wound care. So I kind of float in those lands. I don't like the traditional outpatient orthopedic treat the athlete model, but I certainly could apply for that job. It just wouldn't be a good fit.
Gotcha. So you have lots of options. I guess you said public health. This is where I should maybe plug Megan for a second, because Megan, you're going. Oh, sorry. Okay, you were frozen for a second. You're good. You're going into school for public health degree.
Yeah, I'm getting my master's in public health, specifically in health promotion. And then Faith, my husband, actually just finished medical school, so I can attest it is a very long journey.
Yeah. Cool. So let's see. So, and then so can you give us like a daily, okay, let's just say a pre-coronavirus, like what was your day-to-day like?
So for me, it would be part of my day would be spent on like direct patient care. So evaluations, treatments, or like calling the family to check up on them. And that's more of the traditional physical therapy model, what people would expect. The unexpected part would be I do a lot of consultations. So I work closely with our DME providers. So our providers that give our kids super specialized wheelchairs, standers, bath equipment, anything you can think of. And then also our orthotists and our prosthetists. So our kids that wear ankle braces, or our kids that are they lost part of their limb either at birth or due to trauma, working with their prosthetist to make sure that their prosthetic limb is working. And then a lot of education of the parents. We do an episodic care model. So we do a lot of coaching and try to empower our families to do the therapy at home, because I can't be with them 24/7. And we get the best results if the family's implementing it and it's part of their daily routine rather than me magically doing something. The major differences come from the parents and if they're invested in the care. And then sometimes education of other medical providers or teaching staff.
Right. So there's sometimes, I would imagine, limitations to how much you can do depending on the parents, being that you're in pediatrics, and, like their ability to, or their willingness even, I guess, to go the whole way in providing the care.
Yeah. It definitely, the child's motivation and then their caregiver's motivation are the huge either barriers or like blow me out of the water with how amazing things are going. But sometimes it's mine too. I need to figure out how I can better reach them, because some coaching styles work great for some people and then not well for others. And then people are mourning their children, even though their children are physically present with us. There is a mourning process that goes when your child receives the diagnosis. So kind of understanding kind of the readiness to change or interact with you. Sometimes it takes me a couple years to get them into a spot where they're ready to implement something I wanted to do a couple years ago. And that's fine too. We just kind of meet them where they're at as best we can.
Right. There's got to be an element of building relationships that's, you know, like not something you necessarily went to school for. I don't, maybe that's something that they did touch on though. But really, oh, wow. Yeah. So it's not, that's like the real life kind of practical implementation of what you have to do is, build those relationships and building trust with certain people. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. I work in mental health, for anyone who doesn't know. And we don't work with our clients' families very much. But then in that situation, you're actually trying to build those relationships with the actual clients, because they're more so adults and have been institutionalized and need to be able to trust you and aren't ready to right away. And so I can understand, that's a big part of it, is that element of community work. So cool. And then I guess the follow-up to that would be, how have things changed for you? Considering the coronavirus.
Doing a lot of stuff on Zoom. I'm getting really good on Zoom, and then Microsoft Teams, those two platforms. Getting really good at coaching people. What is great though is our caregivers now, a lot of them have their significant others home, so they get to share that burden, which is great. And I get to see people's bathrooms, which might not be super exciting, but when you're trying to like have a conversation about how to do something visually, like now they can just walk me with their camera and show me what the area of concern is, or they're like, their wheelchair's broken, and before I would have to guess, and now they can just like, here's my phone, look, that's broken.
Oh, how funny.
So there are some definite pluses. I think we'll try to keep the telehealth even when we go back to the office. But it's definitely challenging to not actually be like, I could just fix it if I was right there, or show you how to do it. Physical involvement.
You're like, no, you take the thing and then you do the thing.
You need to get this size Allen wrench, okay? And then you need to turn it. Holding a wrench. That's how you adjust the headrest versus, I just go into my toolkit and adjust it. So it's definitely different. What's great is everyone's giving each other a lot of grace, both the other healthcare professionals I work with and the families, because I have a little 10-month-old and I'm with him full time. Like today's my husband's day off, but 4 out of 5 days when I'm working, I have him. And the families are super cool. They're like, I want to see him. Show me the baby. In a second. So they're giving me grace because they know I might have to pause real quick and like give them a tool and then like jump back on. So it's working out okay. I'm eager to go back, but it's working out pretty well.
Yeah. And I mean, so are you actually able to connect with all of your patients or the majority of your patients?
It definitely varies. Some of our families, I don't think, have the best access to internet. So that makes it like, if you don't have the best access to internet, can't really do a Zoom call. But we can get a hold of some people by phone. Some I've left multiple voicemails, and I'm just going to assume no news is good news. So I wouldn't say that many. It depends on the clinic site we're at, and just the socioeconomics and all of that vary a lot. But the ones that I can get a hold of, I think it's a positive thing.
Right. And then my other question was, but you talked about the telehealth elements. How much are you adding? Like, how much were you not doing before that you are now? And like, what are I know you kind of gave one example, but are there any other things that you're just like, this might actually change the way that we proceed? forever
Yeah.
after
Some of our
coronavirus?
kiddos are really medically fragile and usually don't come out of their houses. They're on home isolation October through March. So now we'll be able to connect with them between cold and flu season, October through March. So that sounds, I think that'll change, because before we just kind of put them on hold and only saw them in emergencies and did more home visits versus bringing them to the clinic. Now we can just kind of Zoom in, make sure they're doing okay, and then Zoom out, and they don't have to physically see us. And some of our families, we might actually use it during their hospital stays, which is kind of cool. So they're limiting, their visitors, but that's something that hopefully we carry on in the future, that when they're in unique situations, we can still see them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you're just finding more ways that you can actually connect with these people, and just finding ways to like provide further help and assistance.
Yeah, hopefully. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone's learning the technology more and more. So yeah, Megan, did you have any questions, or Faith, did you want to say any? Or Megan has a question. Okay.
Well, I didn't have a question. I was just going to say it's what Faith was saying about having access to internet. Some people, depending on, just the socioeconomic status, it kind of depends, whether or not she can meet with them. And so it brings to point, that internet used to be one of those things that was kind of a privilege in a way, but now it's really a need, And so it'd be interesting if this kind of highlights the need to get that access to more people.
Yeah. I know our county that I live in, they're doing these are they school buses or public buses, but they're like supercharging them with Wi-Fi, and they're parking them in different neighborhoods that have less access to internet so kids can do their homework. And it's
That's
like
cool.
Their pilot project. So I think they started it this month. So I'm curious what the results are going to be. But hopefully we get something good out of it. It sounds really cool. I don't know how close they have to be to the bus. But still, if they could be in a park instead of like by a Burger King to do their homework, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think universal internet is like a kind of a new concept that's been put. I mean, I know it's not that new, but I'm talking more in the mainstream. I remember actually reading a Glamour magazine years ago, back when I used to read Glamour magazine, apparently. And I think it was Glamour or In Style or something like that. Anyway, and they had these like influential women, and one of them who were like kind of entrepreneurial or inventors, and one of them was trying to create a sort of like satellite system that would give internet to like the world. And I was like, this is amazing, why don't we have this? And it never happened. Like nothing ever came of it, apparently, because we don't have it. So
yeah, I could really use that right now.
You wonder what gets in the way of stuff like that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Megan really actually does know, considering she's moving and can't get her new internet set up. We do have to, okay, so Megan, can you see the comments right now? Because we haven't checked in.
Yeah, so I can see the comments, but since I don't know, maybe it's because I'm on my phone, I can't actually highlight them and put them up to the screen.
Okay. So let's put this one up, because we have another special guest. This is Makisha, who is our friend from high school. I don't know if Emily's gonna pop in, but we were like a group of friends. It was me, Faith, Emily, and Makisha. And Makisha says certain internet providers are offering free temporary internet access. So you guys should double check. Makisha, what internet do you have? Let us know. Dr. Binary is here. Says that is a fantastic idea. I'm assuming you're talking about the internet idea. Let's go back further.
Someone asked, Faith, I was going to say that one. Did you graduate at 14?
No, I graduated at 18 with Kateri from high school.
Yeah.
And then you graduated.
You did like a fast track thing after. Didn't you do your BA and you got that done a little bit fast?
Yeah. So
right?
Yeah, I graduated with my bachelor's 2 years early, and then I did an accelerated doctoral program, so I graduated with that a year early.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
You are a superwoman.
Yeah, no, she's pretty beast. And then we're going to talk about this later, but I'll put it up now because I like the question. Dr. Faith, what's your book called? We will get to that, guys. Don't you worry. But today is, I mean, the whole point of this is to talk about neurodiversity. So now that we know Faith a little bit better, let us have this discussion. So, Faith, what does neurodiversity mean to you?
Okay. Oh my goodness. No pressure.
No pressure whatsoever.
Yeah. I read a lot about it. A lot of what I read is related to autism spectrum disorder, and it usually seems to describe people who are high functioning. We'll use that. For me, I think it needs to be expanded to other populations. Like I work with kids with cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophies and other things that affect their neurological systems. I think it might be right to reserve it for kind of that high functioning type scenario, because there is this whole debate over why are we defining something as a disability versus diversity, and that's something I don't think we should necessarily minimize. Some people prefer the words like they're neurodiverse. Others say, no, this is a disability. This is something that hinders my life. And I think we just need to respect what the person with the diagnosis is telling us. Is this is hindering my life, or no, this is just a normal variant in my life. But for me, I think anyone with a neurological condition, whether that be something we consider more of a mental health condition, or if it's something we consider more of like a physical manifestation of a brain injury, could fall in the classification of neurodiverse. And then basically, I think it should be the person deciding if they're neurodiverse or not. I don't think a clinician should be deciding. I think the person should make that decision for themselves.
Yeah. I like that philosophy. I guess I didn't know that there was people there's like discussion within the group. Like I just thought it was a term to like broadly, like, so someone with severe autism or severe CP could call themselves diverse, or are you saying that they can, but then there's just people who don't actually like the term?
Yeah, I've heard different things. I've had some patients and friends say, my child's neurodiverse. And usually the people that say that their children are considered high functioning or very neurotypical. But I parents of children that are like nonverbal and they don't usually communicate with like a communication device or an augmented communication device, their parents usually don't use the word neurodiverse, even if they have the same label as someone who does. It really seems to be related to the severity. And some families, there's disability and then there's stigma. And some diagnoses, for whatever reason, carry more stigma now than they once did. It used to be that autism spectrum disorder was kind of stigmatized, but now it's like, oh no, my child is very capable. They have autism spectrum disorder, or some say Asperger's still, even though they took that away, it's still a thing that floats around. So there's different stigmas on different things. Like cerebral palsy seems to be more stigmatized than autism right now. And using the word intellectual disability seems to be a bad word, even if it's the accurate description. So I have seen some children that may or may not be correctly labeled. It just seems to be a preference. And that's how I feel like neurodiverse should be based on someone's preference, because it's not a medical term. It's more of a social.
Right.
So for me, I would never put neurodiverse in my notes unless it was like a note to myself, like this is the parent's preferred language. But it wouldn't be like in the medical record because it's not a medical diagnosis.
Right.
So like, what's the medical word? Is there a medical word, or?
You would do it based on the diagnosis. So this person has schizophrenia. This person has autism spectrum disorder, but is high functioning or has low impairment. This person has muscular dystrophy that affects their cognition. You would just use the medical terminology.
Yeah. Did she cut out for you just there a second, Megan, or was that just me?
No. I heard her.
Okay. I just didn't, for some reason the sound cut out for a second. Could
it's
you
your
repeat
headphones.
that? Yeah.
you just use the medical terminology when talking about a medical condition, whereas neurodiversity seems to be like we use the like disability as kind of a social construct, and neurodiversity is like a construct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Did you have a comment, Megan?
Oh no, I
interrupted you a second ago.
No, I was just agreeing.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I think that's a really, really good way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear like, these words just kind of come up for some, like they just appear. Like they appear in your Twitter feed, or you hear someone say it at lunch or whatever, And so I think it's really helpful to like have just a better understanding of, it's like we use like language, like we need to understand these words and kind of where they come from and where they fit in within their own sort of sphere, like socially, politically, whatever. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. So we had like a quick exchange. You kind of mentioned that you thought that your idea of neurodiverse was maybe broader than what you've noticed it to be more commonly defined as. And I brought up that, I really kind of think like based on what the definition that I had seen when I did my own research, and then also my experience in mental health, I do actually, like one of the main diagnoses I work with is schizophrenia. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a trained professional. I literally just do direct care work. I just help people with their, it's not education that I've had, but I have had experience in the field for a few years. So anyway, so I mentioned that, really like schizophrenia could be neurodiverse. So I'd be curious to like hear you talk about that and let us know some of your thoughts on that.
I don't do a ton of work with kids with schizophrenia. It's not something that's typically diagnosed until they're, college age, and young men and a little older in women. In the hospital, I definitely did care for some people with schizophrenia. I see a lot of like, we use the word neurodiversity, or how I've seen it used, also refers to people dealing with post-traumatic stress. And I feel like I do see that a lot in our children that I work with, because childhood trauma is very real and it affects a lot of our kids. And it's not something they carry that diagnosis per se, but it definitely influences their social interactions and their ability to do certain things. But I would argue that mental health conditions would definitely fall within the category of neurodiversity, especially if they're affecting their social issues. But this is not my strong area of expertise. So I don't have I took, a little bit of psychology in college, and I work with the general public, which requires psychology, but I think it would be really interesting to see maybe how ABA therapists feel about what that word means to them. It'd be nice to have a broader conversation. I think there's a lot of different definitions, and I don't think there's one that's necessarily right or one that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, would you feel like there's a common, it's so hard to define because there's no real definition. It's just your impression of like the societal idea, but the common understanding of what is more so neurodiverse, and then something you would add to it, or a take you would have at all, or is this what you seemed to like hint at when we had that conversation yesterday?
I think a lot of people think like autism spectrum disorder and like OCD or anxiety or post-traumatic stress. I think it would be nice to include people with like brain injuries at birth or shortly after birth, or those with traumatic brain injuries to be included in the conversation. Even those with post-concussion syndromes. There's a lot that we can encompass. The brain's a very complex organ, and it's just that, an organ. So we should think of both those that have those physical manifestations that we can see on the MRI, and then those that have kind of those deeper things, because we know mental illness is real. Sometimes we can see it on MRI, sometimes we can't. So it'd be nice to have a whole bunch of diagnoses, people with different diagnoses speaking, and then people that have strong feelings like they love the word, or people who think the word is very ableist, just having a whole bunch of different perspectives. I don't think there's a set definition. it'd be really cool if we all decided on one, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that generally doesn't happen too often that
No.
we as in society. So let's go back to the comments mid neurodiversity conversation. We have Faith. Would ADHD be considered high functioning?
I think so. I always
so
don't
too.
like ADHD. To me, is some people I know it does make their life more challenging a lot. It's just kind of a bump in the road. But I think if the person wanted to use that language, it would be fine.
Makes sense to say diverse. Here's a question. Just ask if stigma is the reason for diverse.
I think it could be. I know that sometimes parents I've worked with don't tell family members their child has a diagnosis because the diagnosis itself carries the weight versus saying, oh, they walk a little funny, or they do this a little different, or they have a touch of something. So I think neurodiversity came from a positive place. Like, we're describing this as they're neurodiverse, like they do this thing really well. Maybe that's the ability to concentrate on a task for prolonged periods of time without disruption, and that's a big positive. And then we kind of minimize the negative, which might be we forgot to take out the trash like we were supposed to, or call our mom back because we were so hyper focused. I think it came out of a good place.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that sometimes I notice like something can come out of a good place, but then if there's like holes in it, or it's doesn't cover everybody, then some people might have an issue with it. And it's like, well, that's, I think, why we can just continue to have a dialogue and listen to each other. Let's see. So keep moving along. I wrote here now that we've kind of had this conversation on like what neurodiversity kind of is. I mean, would you kind of consider the majority of your patients to be under that umbrella, or is it less, hit or miss? Or
I see probably 60 to 75% would have some sort of, something going on with the brain. I do have some kiddos that are pretty straight orthopedic cases. So my children that have juvenile idiopathic arthritis, or my children with arthrogryposis would definitely not fall in that category, or my kids that lost a limb. But a lot of muscular dystrophies are associated with different brain anomalies, whether that be ADHD or cognitive limitations. A lot of cerebral palsy patients have some issues with either attention or motor planning or motor processing. Even if they are straight A students, that just might be something they have. Our kiddos with spinal muscular atrophy are generally bright as a whip, but they do have sometimes spatial awareness issues. So there's different things that I wouldn't necessarily put kids with SMA in the neurodiverse category, but anytime you have a neuromuscular disease, you think the brain might be involved in some way. And sometimes it's something that's unique to motor planning. Other times it's just trying to get the words out in the correct order. And then some of our kids, it's more subtle than that. They might have an orthopedic concern, an issue, but because they've been so medicalized that they might have some sort of anxiety, and that comes out as a neurodiverse type trait. But it really depends. But 60 to 75%, I think I have some children that are pretty strict orthopedic patients, but the majority have some sort of neurological involvement.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear, because the one parallel I could make to my own experience working in mental health is the way that I honestly believe personality and your brain functioning that has to do with your whatever your diagnosis is can interact, where because I've been working with some people for like 5 years, I've gotten to know them so well that I've just come to understand how just their personality I can't really like give too many specifics, right? But just how their like personality interacts with their paranoia or their anxiety, you know, and stuff like that. So it's like, it's just it does really come down to like, you have your diagnoses, but every case is so different. You know, every case has a person behind it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that definitely seems like that's what you experience as well. Great. So another question I had was, and then we've kind of been talking a little bit about like the brain, and how we don't know very much about the brain. So it's hard you can't really say like, this is what we don't know, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But could you speak to at all some of your own wonderings about like, what do you think we need to know more about the brain, or is there just no way to know?
What I find interesting is some people are at these predispositions for certain diagnoses. And I've treated children that are born like 25 weeks premature, and they're fine. There's nothing like that I can really find that's going on, which is fantastic. It's a miracle. And 25 weeks premature, or born at 25 weeks, 15 weeks premature. But then I'll treat a child at 32 weeks and you'll see their MRI and there's no brain bleeds. There's nothing going on. I read the neurologist notes, but clearly they have a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, but we don't know what's going on. So I think everyone's doing research on a whole bunch of cool topics. I keep learning more. And that's the nice thing about quarantine is I have the luxury of reading research papers. But I'm interested in some of like cerebral palsy. It's just this kind of umbrella term for a whole bunch of conditions. I'd like to know a little bit more about some of the metabolic conditions that can affect the brain. And that's just kind of written at a level that I would like to read too. I want it to be very precise. A level I want to read at. But it would
Yeah.
It's very interesting because there's so many things in the brain. You've got you have your brain has metabolism, and then you have a whole bunch of circulatory systems going on in there. And then it controls a whole bunch of things. And then you have glands, and you have different regions of the brain. And then at birth, you have different, so when you're in utero, the brain develops. It can develop a whole bunch of different ways. Some kids are like have a thin corpus callosum that's like connects the left hemisphere with the right hemisphere. They're totally fine. People just figure that out because they got a concussion. And they're like, oh, you have a thin corpus callosum and you're doing fine. Other kids, they find it on their MRI and it makes a big difference in their life. So I'd love to see your brain is full of all these intricate spider webs. Why does one kid that has the same MRI not function like the other? And I don't know if we'll ever find the answer. It's just one of those fascinating questions. I'm like, your MRI doesn't mean everything, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I think we'll get there. I think, you know, we're working on getting to Mars and stuff like that. I guess well, hopefully, you know, just take some time. Yeah, I'm optimistic, maybe, but hopefully within our lifetime. Yeah, but like within our lifetime, we're probably not going to learn, or will we ever learn everything there is to know about the brain?
No,
probably not. Here's a question. What kinds of treatments for traumatic brain injury do you advise if you feel like you can?
So obviously I can't give advice because I don't know all the specifics, and I would say consult a really awesome neurologist in your area. Brain injuries vary tremendously based in the hospital. What we looked at was the Glasgow coma and then the Rancho Los Amigos scale. Those are two of the big popular scales. There's other ones too. And basically it gives you like a rating of severity, and the scales vary. And the higher the number on the Rancho is better. So depending on what your baseline traumatic brain injury rating is, you're going to have a better outcome generally than a lower rating. And then depending on how quickly you progress in your care, you're going to have a better outcome than someone who didn't progress as quickly. They do have amazing like traumatic brain institutes for young adults and adults. It's generally young men that seem to get traumatic brain injuries, but they can happen to anybody. Car accidents are really common, bicycle accidents. Children, it's usually, unfortunately, it's quite common for it to be child abuse. But if you have a traumatic brain injury, if it's chronic, they have really good neuro rehab institutes across the country. So I would Google that and see what pops up. Usually they have some strict requirements on how long you can have to participate in therapy every day, often 3 hours of therapy. If it's some severe brain injury, some where the person is not able to speak or walk, then really good skilled nursing facilities. So it varies immensely, but making sure you find the right resource for you. And if you think you have a brain injury and you have room for improvement, then look into a neuro rehabilitation institute.
Cool. And then that scale you just mentioned, is that something that they would have a doctor, the doctor would have to do, or?
You can find it online. I'm going to see if I can.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we'll put that in the notes. In the description.
You can find it online. I would definitely say it would be best to have a trained professional do it. There are some therapists that are really comfortable doing that. They're like specialized neurotherapists that would be able to do it, but neurologists, neurosurgeons, physiatrists, and then ER physicians quite commonly perform it.
Awesome. Yeah. And they are grateful for that. Thanks, Dr. Binary. Dr. Binary is usually here. Good to see you, and glad we could answer that question for you. So my last question to do with neurodiversity for you is maybe a little more personal, and I was just wondering, like, well, is there anything, like, observations that you feel like you've learned about society after working with the population? I can kind of speak from a personal place, because I'm not educated, but I did have a job for about 2 years, and I worked with a young girl with pretty severe CP, and I would take her out, to State Street and just walk around. And so I just, had to navigate life with a young person with that condition, or anything personally that you've, any pontifications about life and after working with neurodiversity,
I think a lot of times you learn more about the people you're interacting with. So what I mean by that is some of the families I've worked with over the years, they seem like the all-American typical family. And then for whatever reason, their child is born with a disability or has one acquired. They learn a lot about who their true friends are. And then some families I've seen do amazing work, like start nonprofits. And so people often, if they have someone close to them that is considered neurodiverse as someone that has a neurological condition, they learn a lot about who their true friends and family are, and then what's important to them. So I think it can be a really awesome thing. I think our schools are doing a better job of being more inclusive and having children of all abilities out on the playground at recess, even though it might make sense to have classrooms separated by abilities. I think we're moving in the right direction slowly but surely. But I definitely think there's a lot more work to be done. I've seen grown adults acting like 3-year-olds, and they should know better.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen some of that too. We have another question. What about kids who easily become stressed and feel physical effects? Is that neurological?
I don't know. I know dancing, I always would have to go to the bathroom before going on stage. So there is some sort of link to, I don't know what it is. Everyone had different.
It's psychosomatic symptoms.
Yes, thank you. I was like, what's the word? So it's definitely a real thing. There are conditions that, like conversion disorder is one that's commonly used, where you don't have the physical symptoms from a physical process. So you do, because you have your brain, and that's a physical thing, but it's coming from the brain. It's not coming from the knee. The knee hurts, but it's all the brain making it hurt. So there definitely are conditions. And then there's some crazy migraines out there that actually give children momentary paralysis, which is crazy. So there is some weird stuff. So I would say if you're worried about it, take your kid to their pediatrician and also make a log. Because what helps, I know a lot of my physician friends, is when you have a good diary of symptoms, especially for the weird conditions. So if your child is getting stressed and has a physical effect, kind of write what the stressor is and what the physical effect is, and maybe what time it happened or what day of the week. And for girls that are puberty age, is it related to their menstrual cycle? All of that. So just kind of keep a log of all the variables and then bring it to your pediatrician, and then they can look at it and refer you if needed. But it can be totally normal or it could be something abnormal, but I would not know for sure. I'd say reach out to your pediatrician and try to give them as much information as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
How many times have we like gone into the doctor's office with like that random thing and you're just like, I can't really, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And my knee hurts. And then
and it's hard to advocate for yourself if you don't have that information. So that's, Faith, I'm glad you said that, because having all of that information, sometimes when something is more like neurological than it is like actually physical, sometimes people just don't believe you. So having like that concrete, like, no, I have, this happens at this time and I can give you this diary, I think helps them advocate for themselves a lot better.
It also works great for food allergies.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah, you and Megan have the same food allergy.
Are you celiac too?
So I just have an intolerance. It just gives me really bad like migraines and eczema, and so I haven't messed with it in a really long time. But yeah, I have a gluten intolerance. I haven't been like diagnosed with celiac, so I don't want to say I have it.
Yeah. Faith has a whole history.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's not fun.
Yeah, another conversation. Actually, and I can back to the diary thing. That actually happened to my aunt. She was having headaches for a while, and I don't know if she decided to write the diary or if her doctor told her to, but I know she did. And then they eventually led to her getting her MRI, and she had an orange-sized benign brain tumor in her brain that had to be removed. Thank God it was benign.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you notice these things,
yeah.
diary.
Oh my.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like you that thing that just kept happening. It turns out it was that. Oh gosh. So you never know, guys. Not to freak everyone out. Sorry. But it could be a brain tumor. Just kidding.
What I'm doing all over again. Type in your symptoms. I have a brain tumor. Or I have a cold.
It's either a brain tumor or cold. I don't know. Who knows? Yes. Okay. So awesome. Thank you for talking with me about neurodiversity. I do have another section that I wanted to get on because, and we are going to talk about your book more. So I'm very excited about it. But in the book, you actually talk about, you do talk about advocating for yourself and even getting involved politically. And I've also heard that you yourself are interested in perhaps getting involved in like policy making or, just changing some laws. So yeah, what are those things? What are the things about our healthcare system that from your experience navigating it, you feel could change potentially? Anything like that?
Okay. I'm like, what can I do?
Big topic. Yeah. Oh yeah.
One of the big things I would love to see is more emphasis on prevention. Right now, we have a lot of emphasis in our healthcare on treating the problem after it's been a problem. And Megan's going into health promotion, so we probably share the same philosophy. Yeah. I'll start with a really physical problem. So a lot of kids that use wheelchairs are I'm like getting a whole bunch of texts.
Sorry, it's me in the group. I'm literally in the group text with Faith and Makisha. I should stop. Okay. Proceed. Makisha, don't text me a question.
So a lot of kids and adults that use wheelchairs as their primary form of mobility are more at risk for pressure injuries. And it's something we know, but a lot of healthcare insurers wait for you to have an injury before giving you the needed supplies. And it's kind of silly to me because we're spending money twice, whereas if we would have got them this nice pressure relieving product in the first place, we wouldn't have to then pay for them to heal the wound and then give them the product. So why don't we just kind of skip that step and give them the pressure relieving product and skip the wound and all that trauma? But yeah, so I'd love to see kind of a higher emphasis and more money going towards prevention rather than just treatment. I think the insurances are starting to learn like it is cheaper to give people access to whether that be like a health coach or early screening rather than treating a problem later. But I think it would be nice to still put more of an emphasis on prevention.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, I feel like there's that whole thing of like just not wanting to spend money until you have to. And we really don't want to have that philosophy in a thing like healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
We just read The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, and he has a chapter on the healthcare system. It doesn't go into very big depth or anything like that, but he just talks about the need to sort of remove the money and the money incentives that can be in healthcare. I don't know if this is something that affects your particular industry as much.
Not for me, personally, but
he just kind of cites like the way. I guess I'm kind of curious about the way like you get funding, because even for me personally, like the way my job in mental health gets funding, I think has some issues. So yeah, is there anything along those lines?
I think it'd be nice to give more funding in general to people, but because I work for public health department. Sorry, guys. But in general, I think reimbursement is an issue too, because there's some products that I think would be amazing to get for a patient, but unfortunately, if the reimbursement is too low, I can't get a vendor to provide it. So it makes it tricky because sometimes you have to wait for someone to progress because then you can get them a product that will be reimbursable. Or other times you have to say, I can't get you this product. I have no vendor. There's GoFundMe, there's Amazon. I just wish there was, something in between. For some of our families, paying $25 for a shower chair is not a big deal, but for others that it is, that $25 means one of their kiddos doesn't get dinner. So I think it would be nice if people who are making the decisions on how much something should be reimbursed really looks at the actual physical vendor price, because most of my vendors are amazing and they will provide a product if it's at cost. Like they will take it. They don't need to make money. They'll get it. And then I have some vendors that if I'm ordering a high price piece of equipment, they will take a loss on a lower price piece of equipment, but not every company can afford to do that. So our whole system, we kind of need to look at how can we make sure that everyone can eat. So I'd like, my big thing is prevention, and then just taking a look at our reimbursements, making sure that they seem equitable for both the provider and then the insurer.
Right. Do you feel like in what you do, are you guys able to follow innovation as much as you would like to? Do you have access to the things that, I don't know, like the cutting edge things, the new things that would make your job so much easier, or the life of your patients so much easier?
Yes and no. I do get to learn about them. There's some really cool products out there. I just learned about a self feeder that is super cool. And they have a HCPCS code, which is it's the code you need for reimbursement, and it's assigned a value. So they are having some luck with getting insurance to fund it. So I get to learn about cool stuff, but I still would like to get a light gate. It's not even super fancy. It's
What is it?
It's called a light gate. Basically, it's a harness system that you can put a kid in over a treadmill. So it kind of offloads their body weight. It's not super fancy at all. It's been around for a long time. It has a price tag, I want to say, maybe between $5,000 and $10,000. It's something we would use at the clinic. I wouldn't go home with anybody. It really depends on what county you're in. In a previous county I worked at, they had it. The way my program's funded is there's a lot of different government agencies providing the funding, so it just depends. And I do know that budgets go other places, but it depends. Some clinics I think get the cool stuff. That would be on my wish list, would be a light gate.
Faith's got her like Amazon wish list of like nifty contraptions. I want to know what's on there.
It's
just
pretty
interesting.
Basic. There's like, underwater treadmills, and there's like a whole bunch of fancy treadmills. This one is pretty basic as far as treadmill systems go. Nothing fancy, but but what I've learned a lot in school, they taught us that a lot of therapy can be done with the bare minimum and creativity. And especially in pediatrics, kids don't necessarily want to go on a light gate anyway because it looks scary. So we get creative. So I don't know if I think it hinders. It might just make me, I might get to not have to think as hard, which can come in handy.
Gotcha. We have one more question to Dr. Faith. Chaz, you're so sweet. This is interesting. He says, do you think massage therapy should be considered more in healing potential mental trauma? I wonder if increasing the physical health would increase mental capacity or strength.
I'm not sure. I know PTs kind of stay away from massages. We don't massage people. We might do a mobilization for a specific medical purpose. I do think there's a lot of values in massage. My husband likes to get one every year, especially when he's had kind of a rough year because he holds his tension in his shoulders. I don't know if you're going to get insurance companies on board with massage therapy. The only exception would be for scar mobilization type massage therapy. But I think it's great, and I think it should be encouraged, but it might be a private pay option only. If you ask your PT for a massage, they're going to say no.
Well, good to know.
But I think they're great in general. Like, I enjoy a good massage, and I know I feel better. You just feel more relaxed in general. I don't know. I think there's a lot of different. I know some of my kiddos see more of the like a homeopath or a naturopath doctor, and I don't know much about that, but they would probably have a much better and more informed opinion than I would on massage.
Yeah.
It seems valuable to me. Massages.
Yeah. I'm just curious, are there any other kind of, what would you call, like, alternative healing methods that you wish you knew more about that maybe insurance companies would actually take more seriously because you think they're actually really helpful, or are you just sticking to the books?
I work with some occupational therapists, and some of occupational therapy, they focus on mental health care and motivational interviewing, but I don't think they often get reimbursed for these services, but they've done research studies on like helping people manage their chronic health conditions and then adding an OT to the team, and they have better results. So that might be for diabetics, like compliance with taking their blood sugar, or for people with spinal cord injury, doing their pressure relief. So I love my OT colleagues. I think we should look at giving OTs a little more credit for their awesome motivational interviewing skills and their mental health impact skills. So I would say that's kind of a little more not as traditional, but I think it's really valuable, and I've seen really good results with it.
Right. I mean, I think it just should be traditional. Like, the mental health should be a package deal, and also real life skills, helping people with real life skills, right?
Yeah. They do a lot of OT. Their domain is self-care, ADL, activity of daily living participation. They do some feeding therapy. They have a pretty wide domain too. They're pretty cool.
Cool. Checking the comments. Someone who has had scar therapy. Did that work well for you, Erin, or for your daughter? Let's see. Oh, Erica's here. This is our our friend Erica. She says hi. Hi, Erica. Glad you're
Hi.
here. Hi. And Makisha, of course, she Googled light gates. And she thinks they look awesome. So Makisha has spoken, and Faith. Light gates are awesome.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, this is a follow-up. I don't know if maybe you still actually already answered this, but just curious, I guess. Well, what? But a focused massage treatment like Thai massage, skeletal manipulation. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
It sounds more like chiropractic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that kind of like osteopathic manual manipulation? Yeah, because my husband's he's a doctor of osteopathy, so he's a DO. Yeah, he's a DO. And he has actually done a lot with that for me with my headaches and stuff. But that's a lot more of like the skeletal manipulation. So I don't think that would be counted really as like massage.
Yeah. I don't know. My husband's an orthopedic physical therapist, so he has taken more continuing education classes and is much better at manual therapy than me. And so he can charge from manual therapy, but that's different than massage.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I don't know what it is, so I can't answer well. But manual therapy, and that's a PT thing, and then chiropractors call it manipulation, and then DOs call it
osteopathic manual manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all kind
of that.
Yeah.
I'm out of the loop on this one for sure.
It's something that not many people know about. It's kind of obscure for sure, but it's kind of cool. It's like not really massage, because what you're doing, you're not massaging the muscle. You're letting the muscle put itself back into place, if that makes sense. So it's not quite massage.
It's like more targeted to so you might be working on the fascia, you might be working on the muscle. PTs, when they look at the spine, we might look at the facet versus just, there's a whole bunch you can look at, intercostals, lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's move on to our final
I'm gonna have to Google massage.
Yeah, do your homework, Faith. We all will, I'm sure. So I want to talk to you about your book that I'm so excited that you completed. I have some other random questions for you, but let's just start out with talking about your book. Tell me, why did you decide to write this book? How was writing it? What are your goals? That kind of thing.
So I wrote it because I work with families every day, and I just wanted to make something that I could just be like, here you go. This has answers to many things you were asking and things you have not thought of yet, but you will. So it was written with my patients' goals and needs in mind, to kind of be like a one-stop shop for them, so they don't have to spend hours and hours going kind of down the Google rabbit hole, which is sometimes more dangerous than it is productive.
Right.
And for some of my families, they don't know what diagnosis their child has, and they're toying between like 3 or 4. This kind of has snapshots of a whole bunch of different things, so they can read up on all their things. And I hope it helps like my physician colleagues and my other coworkers, where the parents can be a little more informed when they're talking, so that the first conversation can be productive and the kids and the families can get answers sooner. So it's basically, I wrote it with my families in mind, hoping it can give them the answers they need, and just a little more information. It's just talking a little bit about a lot of things. And then if they want to dive deeper, hopefully they have the language and some of the information they need to do so.
Right. Is there any of this information that you feel like should be taught in school at some point? Because you cover so much.
I feel like a lot of it probably is taught in school.
Well, like the stuff about like having kids kind of wouldn't be, right? Though I don't mean about having kids, but like you'd kind of speak to, well, like the first section is like your kid, like you've had a kid, a baby, and then it turned into a kid, and like the checkpoints and stuff like that. But and a lot of it is kind of geared towards parents in a way, right?
Yeah. Are you thinking like taught in a high school or taught in like professional school?
Oh yeah, taught in a high school. Like for so did you mention? Like, I learned this stuff at some point. No, what I mean is, for my question, I was kind of getting at like you. It seems like you want to disseminate information so people have a point of reference, a foundation. And I'm just wondering, you know, it's like, it seems to me like maybe then the general population, this is a lot of stuff that people don't know. Could you see is there any of this information that you feel like should be taught in a more public way? I don't know, other than high school, I don't really know how else, but just curious.
Some of it, I think it just depends on what type of family you grew up in. Like my parents are, well, you know, Kateri, they're both educators, and my mom, 30 plus years, my dad has many jobs, but so they kind of knew this stuff. My mom used to babysit kids, so she had practice children. Not everyone has that luxury. Some kids become parents at young ages, or some just don't have great family support. So like the first chapter is more, well, this is what I wish everyone's mom or dad or aunt or uncle or their cousin taught them. But I know not everyone has that luxury, so we're going to put it all here. I think a lot of people, they get it through their family. It might be nice to have it in a health class, just like a PowerPoint slide, but I don't know how many people would ever go back to it or would remember. But pamphlets in doctors' offices often cover a lot of information. So I would say if you're expecting or have a new child, look in your OBGYN or your pediatrician's office for a pamphlet of any questions you have, or the CDC and then the American Academy of Pediatrics have really good websites too that cover a lot of these things. And it's in pretty user-friendly language too, which is great.
Yeah, that's important, right?
Yeah.
Having it be accessible to the information, but also being able to understand the information. Faith's chapter titles are very understandable and oftentimes funny. I appreciate that. So and like, I guess you kind of said, like, what are you hoping to accomplish? So first of all, you've just finished your first draft of it, and you're going to be editing it and trying to get it to publishers and stuff like that. Have you started that process at all, or that's going to be the next step?
I've submitted to a couple just last week, so haven't heard back. But I did.
Oh, everyone give
to a couple, so it's a lot of pages for people to read. A lot of pages.
Yeah. Did you have to do like a summary or something, or
depended on the publisher? Some wanted like a letter type thing with more of like a proposal, and others are like, oh, if you have the whole thing, I'll read it.
Yeah. So is this something that you would see like a major publisher doing, or something that specializes more in like health information?
I think it's more of a niche market, but maybe not. It's kind of written to be like, you know how they have the what to expect books, like for people who are pregnant, or like what to expect the first year. This is kind of what should I expect when things aren't going as expected. So for some people that might be, I know I have friends that are nervous moms. They might just buy the book just because they're worried about one thing, or they might borrow it from a friend. So it could be a mass market, but I think it's written more with a parent or a caregiver of a child with a disability, or one that's worried their child has one. So probably more of a niche market.
Right. Well, I think that's a good segue, because one of my questions was, you were writing this as a new mom, and like, did you see yourself in any of this hypothetical writing that you were doing? Were you pulling from a place of realness for yourself, or how was that?
I actually wrote the majority before Noah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I wrote some of the heavy content, diagnosis specific stuff, like maternity leave afterwards. He was supposed to come in July and he came in June. And I had the big plans, like with my little break before he comes on maternity leave, to finish it and write it and make it beautiful. And then he came early. So, totally fine.
Of course.
Super
Yeah.
cool. And we bought a house that same time period. So it was like all of my big plans on, I'm going to write it and finish it. And I took a back seat, but it was definitely nice reading over it and making the edits as a new mom, especially because he's a little strange and I love it. So it's kind of, I do worry about him in a different way now. So having the perspective, writing it as just a pediatric therapist, not a mom, and now kind of the combination, I think is cool.
Yeah, at least when you go back and as you're editing it now, you have that whole experience that you can pull from. Let's check in with the comments again. Erin says she always takes the pamphlets. You and Faith are in the same. Megan and I don't have kids, so
No.
We should take the pamphlets anyway, because free shit. No, I'm just kidding. And then we have a thank you for working with kids, also from Erin. Let's see what else.
Like, thank you for letting me hang out with your cool kids.
I love that. So, okay, and then Makisha has a comment. I haven't even read it. Let's see. High school health classes actually sound like a great opportunity to introduce the concept of neurodiversity, especially in terms of reducing stigma. Well, I like that, Makisha. Yeah. I knew I liked you for a reason. Sorry. Like that would be great. If you could turn your experience into a high school class, Faith, what would it be like?
Oh, goodness.
What a big question.
High schoolers of junior hires, but scary. I went to an elementary school in Modesto called Sonoma just in 6th grade because I was dancing in Modesto. So I need to be close to my dance studio. We make very sound academic choices in our household. But what was really cool about—
I'm glad you did.
It worked out great. What's very cool about that school was they have a CCS on campus. So they get a whole bunch of kiddos that have physical disabilities on campus. It's kind of like a magnet school because they have access to really nice specialized therapy at the school. But what they made sure they did was have recess at the same time. So children with cognitive limitations and then children in regular education would get the opportunity to interact and hang out. And they also had clubs where you were forced together. And I think that's super important because you realize they're not that different. They're just like my little brother, or they're just like my friend. And I think just giving more access for people to meet each other, even on the playground. I know I've witnessed it on the playground that people pull their kid away from the child using crutches or the child with Down syndrome. I think if people are more open to letting their children experience life with kids, regardless of ability or even skin tone, just let everyone play together when they're young, and then they'll be better adults playing nicer together in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that model. I love that crossover model that it benefits everybody, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone involved. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of everything about your book. Congratulations in writing it. And
congrats.
Faith just made a Twitter, so we will I made a Twitter, I should clarify that. It's at Faith at Faith Stevens 927, I think. Oh, I think somebody's here. Yay! You have to lift him a little bit if you can, because you just see his eyes, but there's look at that smile. Hey, Noah. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did want to ask any organizations that we should know about and support, and also any books.
Organizations, that varies a lot by state and region.
Right.
So if you hear about one, that's cool. Like you can check them out on Charity Navigator to see how they're rated to make sure the money is going where you want it to be. In general, there's so many good ones. I like the Cerebral Palsy Foundation, and then I like the Parent Project for Muscular Dystrophy. And then a whole bunch of like unique specific ones. In San Luis Obispo County, they had Jack's Helping Hands, and that was unique to that county. So just kind of look at what's in your county. I think it's nice to kind of think local, or what is it? Think local, act local. That's the quote, but I forgot who said it.
I say it all the time though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know either. Love it.
And then,
I said it.
For health books, like specific diagnoses, the Johns Hopkins Press has a series that's really nice, and they're usually written for parents. And then for diagnosis specific, I wrote them down. For cerebral palsy, If at Birth You Don't Succeed by Zach Anner. He's like a comedian, and he has cerebral palsy, and he's really funny. And I haven't read his book yet, but I really want to. And then Shane Burkaw has spinal muscular atrophy, I believe. I believe it's SMA. I might be wrong. And he's wrote several, and I haven't read them, but I've seen him on YouTube with his girlfriend, or I think his fiance. And two of them are Laughing at My Nightmare, and then Strangers Assume My Girlfriend is My Nurse. He's in a relationship with an able-bodied woman, and their YouTube videos are super cute. So
They're adorable.
They're just great.
They're so cute.
Love it.
Like adorable. And then said kids books, right?
Well, any books, kids books you like to read to Noah, or any books really.
Okay. Kids books, I like Julian is a Mermaid. I know. You know that one. It's gorgeous illustrations too. Really great story. And then Noah likes penguins for whatever reason. So I read him Tango Makes Three, which is about two male penguins that got a penguin baby in the New York City Zoo, and it's super cute, and he likes penguins. So
I love that.
Then he's like, "Are you talking to the camera? Do you want to hear?"
He's like, "I want to tell you what books I love."
So he'll like when I'm working, he'll give him a sticky note. He's happy. He also Giraffes Can't Dance. Big fan. Dragons Love Tacos.
I love that book.
And Dragons Love Tacos too. And then Little Blue Truck. He likes
that. Yes.
And
I got Hyra, my nephew, a Little Blue Truck Christmas book.
It's one of my orthotist friends got me that, and she's like, "I love this book." And Greg loves it too, my husband, and he reads it to him. It's very sweet. Yeah.
That's very sweet. Super, super cool. Oh my gosh. Okay. I think that's everything I have. Thank you for doing this and getting our whole neurodiversity conversation running. This was our first ever YGBC Talks. I didn't plug that, did I? YGBC Talks, we're going to be trying to do more live streams that also where we kind of have just open discussions with people about other things than just books and learn about stuff through discussion, really, right? So stay tuned for more. We have a couple more already that we'll be announcing. Follow Faith so that you can look out for her new book when that comes out within hopefully the next year. We'll cross our fingers. And thanks everyone for being here. Bye guys.
Bye guys. See you next time.
Bye Noah. Everyone say bye to Noah. Bye, Noah.
Bye.